Loch Ness, a place of haunting beauty and ancient silence. Hidden in the Scottish Highlands, surrounded by misty hills and dark waters that seem to go on forever, it's a place where time feels frozen. Locals say the loch has secrets, things that move beneath the surface when no one is watching, things that shouldn't exist, but just might. Because every now and then, someone sees something, and what they see never leaves them. These are three actual and lesser-known events that took place on Loch Ness. In the spring of 1934, just after 6 in the morning, a woman stepped out of her small cottage near the edge of Loch Ness. She was alone. The mist was thick that day, the kind that clings to your clothes and blurs the horizon into nothing. She walked a short path toward the water, the same one she took every morning. It was quiet, too quiet. Then, she saw it. Down by the shore, lying just at the water's edge, was something massive. At first, she thought it was a log, driftwood maybe, but then it moved, breathed. The shape lifted slightly with a slow heaving motion like something resting, sleeping. Its neck was long, at least 6 feet, curving up in a loose arch. At the end of it sat a narrow head, shaped like a snake's, but larger, smoother. Its eyes were black, glassy, with no lids, just fixed, expressionless spheres staring toward the trees. She didn't scream. She couldn't. She said later it felt like her whole body had turned to stone. Her lungs wouldn't work. Her limbs wouldn't move. The creature just lay there, as if it had been there for hours. Then, slowly, its head turned. And it looked straight at her. As she described it, she wasn't looking at an animal. She was being watched, judged, and then it moved. With a slow, silent motion, the creature slid back into the loch. Not diving, not splashing, just vanishing beneath the water, as if it had melted into it. When she ran back to the lodge, she was white as a sheet, shaking, breathless. Some of the other workers followed her to the shore. They didn't believe her story until they saw the ground. There were prints, wide, sunken impressions in the earth, like something heavy had been resting there. No drag marks, no hooves, just deep, rounded holes that led right into the water. She never walked that trail again. She never talked publicly about it, but the locals said, after that morning, she was never quite the same. And when the fog rolled in from the loch, she'd stay inside, curtains drawn, because she'd seen what lives beneath the surface of the Loch Ness. It was a quiet evening in the Scottish Highlands, sometime in the late 1960s. A man in his early 50s had taken his small rowboat out near Foyers, along the southern shore of Loch Ness. He'd fished those waters for decades, never caught much, but he didn't care. For him, it wasn't about the fish. It was the silence, the solitude. The loch had a way of making a man feel like he was the only soul on earth. That evening, the sun had already dipped behind the hills, and the water had gone almost completely still. A cold breeze stirred the reeds. He let his line sit and leaned back, drifting slightly, eyes half-lidded. Then came the sound, a heavy splash, not far off. Not a fish, not a bird, something heavier, much heavier. He straightened up and turned, peering toward the far side of the loch. At first, he saw nothing. Then a shape broke the surface. It rose slowly, disturbingly silent. A long, arched neck. A head not unlike that of a seal, but narrower, with an elongated jaw. Its skin was dark, mottled and glistening wet. It didn't make a sound, it just stared. The man estimated the creature was no more than 20 yards from his boat. He didn't move. He barely breathed. He later said it felt like if he so much as blinked, the thing would come for him. For a moment, the world was completely still. The thing in the water didn't move closer. It just floated there, its long neck gently undulating as if tasting the air. Its eyes were wrong, too deep set, too black, like polished stone. He had the overwhelming sensation of being studied, like a deer under a hunter's gaze. And then, slowly, it began to sink. Not dive, not swim, just slowly sank. The head was the last part to disappear beneath the surface, eyes fixed on him until they were swallowed by the black water. The lock went still again. The man sat motionless for what he later guessed was over 10 minutes. Then he rowed, without speaking, without turning his back to the water. He rowed until his arms ached, until he reached the shore and pulled the boat up onto the rocks like a madman. He told no one at first. But days later, in the village pub after a few whiskeys, he spoke up. Not to brag, not to impress, just to get it off his chest. He didn't call it a monster. He didn't say, Nessie. He just said, there's something in that water, and it watches us. After that night, he never went out on the loch alone again. Some say he took to carrying a small knife on his belt, even indoors. No one laughed at him, because the way he told it, quiet, cold, shaking, it didn't sound like a tale. It sounded like a warning. She was a young woman back then, in the 1930s, out riding her horse along a narrow trail that hugged the shoreline of Loch Ness. It was a mild afternoon in late autumn. The air was crisp, the trees, mostly bare, and mist hovered low over the water like a curtain slowly drifting across the surface. The trail was familiar. She'd ridden it dozens of times, even as a child. It offered peace, just the rhythmic sound of hooves on damp earth, the occasional cry of a bird, and the quiet lapping of the loch. But that day, something was wrong. Her horse, usually calm and obedient, began to slow near a bend in the trail where the trees opened up, giving a wide view of the loch. Its ears pinned back, its body tensed, and then it froze, refusing to move another step. She nudged it gently, then firmly. Nothing. It stood like a statue, nostrils flaring, breathing hard. Then she felt it too, that prickling on the back of her neck, that sudden sense of being watched. She turned toward the loch. Just past the tree line, near the edge of the water, something had emerged. It was massive, grayish-black, almost blending into the rocks and reeds. At first, it looked like a pile of wet stones until it moved. A long neck rose slowly, unnaturally, like a serpent lifting itself out of the deep. At the end of it was a narrow head, smooth and oddly angular. Its mouth was closed, but she could see a faint line where the jaw met, like it could open much too wide. But it was the eye that haunted her. Just one, from the angle she stood. Round, flat, and glassy. Not like an animal's eye, more like a dead thing. It stared at her, cold and unblinking. She didn't scream. She couldn't. The creature didn't roar, didn't move toward her. It simply watched. There was no aggression, just awareness, as if it had seen her many times before, as if it had been waiting. Then, as quietly as it had appeared, the thing slid back into the loch. Its massive shape vanished beneath the surface without a splash. The water barely rippled. Her horse reared slightly, nearly throwing her, then bolted down the trail. She didn't try to stop it. She never rode that path again. In fact, she stopped going near the loch at all. When she told her family, they dismissed it, said it must have been shadows or a dream. But she knew what she saw. Her horse knew too. Years later, when she was older, she told the story again. Quietly, almost apologetically, as if afraid the memory might wake something. She said the thing's eye never left her. Not that day, not years later. And sometimes when she walked near still water, she swore she could feel it again. That cold gaze just below the surface, waiting.